Welcome to the program today. We are back with some question and answers. Myself and Karen, here we are.
Hello, good to be back.
It's good. It's been a while. And before we jump in today, I want to remind everybody about our Orlando Prophecy Conference, which is coming up in February 29th. Actually begins on March 1st, but February 29th through March 3rd, we're going to be there with 18 speakers. And so if you haven't had a chance to check that out, go to orlandoprophecysummit.com. It's going to be a great time. Things are happening super, super fast. And if you're unable to join us, then certainly consider joining us through live stream. And you can find that information again at orlandoprophecysummit.com. So Karen, here we are. We kind of resurrecting this. It's been a while, but we do have some good questions coming in.
Yeah, you've pulled some good ones out of the vault. And it's been a while, but I have a really good one for today. I'm interested to see how you answer this one. Does the Passover 2024 red heifer ceremony have any connection to the rapture and when the third temple will be rebuilt?
So this is kind of fun because there's been certainly a lot of interest on the red heifer ceremony. And for those that might not know much about this, going all the way back to September 15th of 2021, 5 red cows, red heifers were brought over to the land of Israel at a cost of $100,000 each.
Wow.
Very expensive steak, if you want to say it that way. And it was another, $200,000 just in transportation costs. So here you have these 5 cows that were sent over from a ranch in Texas, actually a couple different ranches. But the question always comes up is, okay, well, what does this mean? How close is it to the rapture? What does it mean with the third temple? And we've done a lot of interviews on this and other things, but specifically the question here, which I thought was helpful, is this connected to the rapture and to exactly when the third temple would be rebuilt? So there's a couple ways, I think, or a couple things that are important. Is first of all, the people that are in the know. I've been interviewing some of these people, and thankfully they've been gracious enough to keep me updated on the progress. Is that 1 out of the 5 is mostly disqualified. They're trying to still hope in case they need it, but the other 4 are 100% qualified. So this is the fascinating thing, and I'm not real dramatic and sensational, but I do find it interesting that this is the first time in 1900 years that there are official qualified red heifers.
Yeah, for sure.
That could be slaughtered. I don't use the word sacrifice because sacrifices take place on the Temple Mount or on the altar, which is near the temple. And so these aren't sacrifices in that regard, but it is a red heifer slaughter. It's a burning of the cow, as Numbers 19 says. And it's also done on the Mount of Olives. So what they're saying is that, they've been saying it for a few months actually, that Passover 2024 will be the time that they wanted to slaughter at least one of the cows. Again, on the Mount of Olives, they have 2 pieces of property that they've purchased, and they wanted to coincide it with the Passover festival. So I find that very interesting. And so here we are, we're in January now, 2024. Passover, I think, is like April 8th or April 20th, right around, anyway, mid-April, whatever. And so they are saying, no, we're on schedule. Now, what has happened is the war with Hamas has caused some trouble, and it has caused some, I think, political care or caution, because they're already doing this, and do they want to stir up trouble by granting the permits to have this ceremony? So you could argue it either way. This is a very religious government, and so it could be in their mind like, we're going to show them who's in charge. Yeah. We're going to show Hamas, we're going to show the Palestinians who's in charge. We're going to let them go for it. And so they might just do it out of spite, honestly. The other angle would be that they don't want to upset the apple cart any more than it already is, throwing fuel on the fire. So this particular government, it's hard to know which way they're going to go. And so the main question here, that's a little bit of background, is this connected with the rapture? Well, the answer is no. The rapture is not connected to anything. The rapture is, we believe that it's imminent. It can happen at any time. There are no signs that, this is the key word, there are no signs that must precede the rapture. It's like, oh, the rapture can't happen until A, B, or C. So nothing must happen for the rapture to happen.
Right.
However, things can happen prior to the rapture. So a lot of people make that mistake of going, well, the rapture can't happen if the red heifer happens. And you're like, well, no, there's no connection at all. So the rapture is kind of this moving, well, it's not moving in the mind of God, but it's not connected to any specific event. So for example, we could see Psalm 83, we could see Ezekiel 38, we could see the red heifer, and that doesn't tell us anything about the rapture. All it does is it tells us that if the red heifer ceremony happened, that is a precursor for the rebuilding of the third temple, because the third temple can't be rebuilt until they are able to purify the priests in some ways, or purify the Temple Mount area. So that's why the red heifer ceremony would precede the building of the third temple. But the rapture has no real anchor point in there.
So theoretically, the red heifer would be able to cleanse the temple area to rebuild the third temple.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And so one of the things that's interesting is that one of the other things that the red heifer ashes, once they burn the cow and they in the wood, they get the ashes, they mix it with water, and then the priests, the leadership, would be able to sprinkle people, and they would be able to be cleansed from being unclean, and then they'd be able to walk up, and they probably would go up. There's no doubt they would go up and sprinkle all of the Temple Mount area and make it clean, which then from that point forward, you would probably see tourism change, because right now people are going up on the Temple Mount,
Right.
and you know, I'm not, if I go up there, I'm not clean in the rabbinic sense, right? Or even in the Old Testament temple sense. And so if the rabbis ended up somehow with control of that, they'd say, well, you're not allowed to come up here, number one, because you're Gentile. It's just interesting how that might change the dynamics of what that looks like, even for as it relates to the Muslims. So they probably would have a court of the Gentiles like they did in Old Testament times, or New Testament, even first century times. And so they'd go up there and cleanse it, and they'd say, okay, this is blocked off. Nobody's allowed in here that hasn't been sprinkled with the ashes of the red heifer. And so as we watch this, the other thing that is important is that as we're looking forward, we have no idea, again, the rapture can happen anytime, but people ask, well, how do we know when the third temple is going to be built? Well, all we know is this is super important, that in Daniel 9:27, that in the middle of this tribulation period, so the midpoint, it says that the sacrifices and the offerings are ceased by the Antichrist. So all we know is at that moment, there's a temple existing, then they're offering sacrifices. Well, they could have been in operation for a day or a week or a month. We don't know.
I didn't think about that. The temple could be built at any point from
any
now
point.
up until that.
Up until the day before.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it also could be here for 10 years or 15 years, which I would be a little surprised, but there's no scripture. I would just be surprised in my own hunch. So what we're watching now is the temple. Again, if the temple was built tomorrow or started to be built tomorrow, I wouldn't say, oh no, we missed the rapture. Remember, the rapture's not tied to anything. I would just simply go, wow, that shows us that the tribulation period is getting that much closer, where in the middle of it, the sacrifices have stopped. So is there any connection to the rapture or when the third temple will be built? This ceremony that hopefully might happen in one sense in Passover. And even there, I'm not saying I want it to happen or I'm endorsing. That's the other thing, is we're not, just because we're talking about this does not mean we're endorsing it. We're simply just looking at the prophetic scenario and seeing that these things are all signs of the return of Jesus. That gets me excited. But oftentimes when we talk about it, people are going, you shouldn't be promoting this or endorsing it. Well, we're not endorsing it.
Right.
We're simply saying this is a prophetic sign that is it's a pre-sign really of the third temple in that regard. So that would have been my answer.
Fascinating. Well, thank you for your answer. I think we'll all be looking forward to see what happens in April, but thank you all for joining us today, and be watching for our next questions and answers with Mondo.